what to look for. It was
Right.
just a priceless, one-of-a-kind piece of wood. And once you started playing it, you couldn't put it down. You were just in heaven.
Yeah.
And so, but I lost my Haynes flute, my brand new Selmer tenor, and the clarinet. And I'm still trying to go to police force to this very day and go in and see if they got it up on a shelf, because a guy I knew stole it. And I tried to save him many times, but it didn't work out. He just stole it and probably hawked it for drugs.
Yeah, probably.
So the idea was that I'm still going to not give up on those horns, because that
Right.
was me. That was actually who I was.
Yeah.
And so, so anyhow, I had to play alto on the thing. But he decided that instead of letting the band that's now working, Clarence Acox and the alto guy, Seattle Jazz Repertory Orchestra, taking my book and playing that book. He came in and got the book and rehearsed. I think it was 22-piece band with two singers, 20 plus two twins. It was a big band, powerful. 6 saxophones. Oh God, I loved it. But they wrote great charts. So I had about 25 charts. And because I sometimes had to feed my family, I sold about 4 of them, which I shouldn't have done. But I got good money, a lot more than what I paid for them. But they wanted to just be in that band. It was like, if you work with Duke Ellington, that's where you wanted to be. You wanted
Right.
to stay with that band
Yeah.
because of the interesting music.
Yeah.
And so these guys wrote great charts, and I was just like, wow, Wowsville, Ohio. But then Petrillo put me down, and I just never looked back. But now I'm coming back after 50 years, it's maybe 60 years. If I'm 88, let's see, probably 60 years.
Yeah.
70 years, maybe, I don't know. But anyhow, the dealy bob is when I get back in Key West, I got full-time work down there, brunches, and so I'm going to go down there and play with Rocky Snocky.
Yeah, your son.
My kid, yeah.
So I wanted to ask just a quick question. For somebody who's, a young person who's interested in jazz but doesn't play it yet, can you tell them what it's like to, when you're in that practice room and you're listening for the right instrument for you? What is that feeling like, that experience?
Well, it's having ears. Oh, hi, folks. Having ears is what you got to cultivate. And trying to listen to ornithology, which is How High the Moon. The chord changes at, to 14 years old. I was playing Artie Shaw stuff, and on stage with he had a theme song called Nightmare, and it was tom-toms, and it was great. And this woman clarinet player is doing those tunes, Annette Cohen. Anyhow, so it turns out that most people quit. They get out of high school, and they're a waitress. They didn't have the guts or the opportunity, which I had. I had a teacher living with me practically.
Right, yeah.
Which I couldn't have afforded.
Right.
And he was somehow interested in me, and I was just thrilled to have somebody that liked me.
Yeah.
And you play a gig, you don't talk. I just leave, I pack up and go. And so it turns out that he had a history of being the greatest teacher. He taught at the University of Washington. And believe it or not, he taught Kenny G, But Kenny G still sort of missed the open tone. He can imitate it. Right. But there's a subtle thing there that when you find the real thing, it's different.
Right.
So he's playing. A couple of years ago, he made $50 million playing the straight soprano saxophone in
Kenny
one
G.
year.
Kenny G?
Huh?
Kenny
Yeah, Kenny G.
Yeah.
So he hit the teenage market. He knew how to market. He was a businessman. He never studied music at all. He never listened to Charlie Parker. He didn't listen to Lester Young. He just stayed home and entertained himself in his living room, playing what he liked. Well, what happened was, God, and I played with him for about 3 years at the Seattle Center on Saturdays. I was playing third alto and improvising for the lead alto who didn't play jazz. Or so when a solo came up, I stood up and covered his gig. And then, but there's Kenny G, and he was the most unsociable guy I ever talked to. He was going to business and economics, not studying music, nothing. But he had brains enough to study saxophone from Johnny Jessen. And they became very good friends. And when Johnny died, Kenny G made a great spread in the Seattle Times and on the radio and television about Johnny Jessen's greatness. And so he was, changed, I think, when he got out of Seattle and went to L.A. Then he saw, oh, man, they got the tools, the experience, they've been doing this. So it wasn't Seattle. This is like dropping off into no man's land as far as professional music goes.
Yeah.
And so, I've just been lucky, that's all. But I think what I'm going to do is when I get back from Key West, and I recorded the Fish album, which is sold out, and I recorded their Legend Plays the Legendary, that's sold out. So I'm going to record one on romantic tenor, which is like Frank Sinatra's daughter Nancy with a laughing face, and I want to record just about 8 tunes, and then I'm going to do some singing on 8 tunes, and then split to L.A. And just go down there because they got
everything.
They got everything. What are you going to do?
Yeah. And
thank you, Daniel. I love you, pal. You are the greatest in the land. And so, so where was I?
I don't know. Do you want to continue, or are you getting tired?
I'm going to continue. I'm just getting started,
All right.
So I got through my band of 1 year, which was everybody dug it and validated by Paul DeBarra. So, but I'm going to record it. They recorded it, the rehearsal, and it was just like, God, that's timeless.
Yeah.
That's not cheesy.
Yeah.
That's not corny.
No.
That's real music.
Yeah.
And so it's timeless. And I think it's because the wandering French horn, they still don't have a wandering French horn. Maybe Jim Knapp has added a French horn to his 9-piece band or whatever that is, which is smart. It's a tone change.
Yeah.
And all the movies you hear, I listen to old-time movies, you can hear 2 or 3 French horns comping dialogue,
Right. Did you want to talk at all about the National Guard 41st Infantry Band?
Well, I was in the National Guard because of World War I and World War II. God, thanks a lot, folks. If you get any work right. Anyhow, the idea was I'm going to have. So I went in there, and my first student was Buddy Catlett, and Bumps Blackwell said, "You don't have to suit up. I'll give you $6.25 for an hour and a half teaching kids." So Buddy came in with a alto, and I got him to play the chromatic scale right away. And he was every meeting night, I think it was Thursday night at the old armory. So Buddy would come in, and then I left town on the road. I went traveling on the road, and I was gone for quite a while. When I came back, I went up to say hi to Johnny, and there was Buddy Catlett taking clarinet lessons from Johnny Jessen. I thought, yeah, wow, that's great. But when Buddy died, I at Jazz Alley just a couple of months ago, I sang My Buddy.
Yeah. And
it went over really well because But I was with him till the very end, I was there in the hospital, both hospitals. His daughter, Natalie, and me tried to, but I was looking out for Buddy, and then I did Stompin' at the Savoy, and on clarinet, and I did the waltz, Nights Are Long Since You Went Away, my buddy, and then we put him away.
Yeah, that's a nice selection for a memorial.
Yeah, it was a packed house. The Jazz Alley was packed. God,
yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, sold out. He sold out, but Buddy was just so upset that Louis passed on, that he started juicing it in Brooklyn. And then finally he just sold. He didn't have instruments. Came in right away. I hired him for the Seattle Center at 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 3. We did that for several weeks.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a bass.
And what year is this roughly?
I think it was in the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. But what happened was we're playing Christmas parties at a bank. And the accordion player, who I just did 14 years with at Muckleshoot, Bert Carlson, we played from 2 in the afternoon until 6 at night every Sunday, forever. And we went through 3 band leaders. 3 band leaders died on that band. The guy had a radio show in Tacoma every Saturday and Sunday, Bob Bleak. And so turns out that all these gigs that I was doing were overlapping. But it was the idea that Buddy came back, and so he didn't have a bass. But finally he got a bass because we went to work at LaFerno's with Mickey Martin and the Gents of Jazz. And that was a huge success. We played, I think, a tenor, piano player out of Chicago, Mickey, and Buddy. So Buddy stood right next to me, about 4 days a week, playing whatever Mickey wanted. The only thing that Buddy said was, they would come up with this old-fashioned high stage and lay a whole ton of money down on the stage and ask Mickey, would you tap dance for us? And so he would carry his tap shoes. I got them. Mickey gave me, when he died, I got Mickey Martin's tap shoes, which are quite exciting. They just sing, they just sizzle. And so we are playing along. So I would go up on the pedestal where Mickey was playing drums and sing, and I would watch him, because I'm a professional drummer also. Studied years and years and years, all the Latin stuff. And so, and the guy was a tough teacher, I tell you. But he was at the Fisher Studio building, and Krupa would come in, Buddy Rich would come in, all the local hot jam, they were all up there paying dividends to Shorty Clough, who was the guy who was the teacher. And he wouldn't change the pains. I'd keep giving him money, and he wouldn't change. If I didn't have the accents right, he wouldn't change the pains. If I get so mad at myself. So I'd have it. I'd practice. So I went down there and finally turned the page. So he treated me, either I did it or I was nowhere,
Right.
And so, but with Buddy, he never said a word. But one time I'm up on the drums, and Mickey stepped down, put his tap shoes on, and went down, and could have had a heart attack, could have killed himself. He played the juice harp, tap dance like crazy. Then he had a great slow motion tap dance, which to hook your brain right in. He taught Sammy Davis on the street how to tap dance. And so when he came up, out of about 4 years of playing with that band, Buddy finally said, well, hey, how's about paying money to the guys that have backed you up? And Mickey looked at him like, what is that? I don't see you down there tap dancing. And he never shared any of his tap dancing money with any of us. But I was surprised. I was shocked. I'm sitting up on this drum set trying to get, Mickey back on the set. and couldn't believe that Buddy would have the gut. But I guess if you play with Louis Armstrong, you can do that.
Right.
And so he told Mickey, "Hey, man, we want some. What about the guys that are backing you up? Aren't you going to help us?" Mm-hmm. But Mickey turned him down. It's like, but that's okay. I was thrilled that somebody could. I didn't expect any money. I was getting good money and tips, jar.
Right.
But I couldn't believe Buddy popped off after maybe 3 years of backing him up.
So, how do you think your time playing in Seattle has shaped your career? Because you mentioned earlier you could have, and many people did, leave.
Yeah, all of them left and never came back.
Yeah, and you stayed. What effect do you think that had on your career?
Well, I was never a businessman, and I was. My social life was either bed or bandstand, and so I was with this young lady, Gypsy Sue, who played violin and was could speak German fluently, could speak French. No. Italian. No. Spanish fluently. And we were together for like 21 years, and somehow I got a call from New York. And she came up to me and said, we were painting the floor in the cabin. I have a cabin right on the water worth a lot of money. And so she was painting the floor powder blue with my dad's shirt on, and she would always take violin lessons from somebody in Bremerton who was in the Navy. So anyhow, we're going along, but she doesn't know this to this day, and she just came by about a week ago and said hi to me. Couldn't believe it. But she went off and got married to her high school sweetheart. So what happened was I get a call from New York, and Boeing and Douglas are merging at 7 o'clock in the morning on Boeing Field. And they hired these heavy hitters out of New York, a 2-trumpet player, but they were playing Royal Garden blues and all the trad jazz music that was popular, joyous music. And so I get a call. We can't find a jazz clarinet player, improvising jazz clarinet player that knows that genre. And I says, well, I've been doing that all my life. And they says, well, then we'll hire you to play with this New York band. I said, okay. Well, that gave me a stress factor because I was sort of out of shape. I was playing a lot of tenor. And so then I was at the cabin. And I just wanted to be, I'm going to make, not music, I'm going to make muscles work. Because I got it in my head. You're going to play fidgety feet. Well, okay, I did that at the Wild Waves. So the idea was they wanted me. So I didn't tell Sue. I told her, just go in and take your violin lesson. Somehow she got upset with that. So anyhow, the next morning I got up at 5 a.m. So I'm at the cabin. I catch the last boat to Seattle, 9 o'clock ferry. Go up to my apartment. Got there at 10. And got everything all set to go, and I had a chance to warm up my muscles to sound like the tone that I have. So I was, okay, I'm ready. I'm on my tippy toes, and in comes this under a big white tent on the field, and they built a stage for the president of Douglas Aircraft and the president of Boeing. And they both gave speeches up there, and we're underneath. So we had 2 trumpets, trombone, clarinet, guitar, bass. I think it was an 8-piece band. And they were all validated cats, They were heavy hitters, and I didn't want to look like somebody that I didn't know what I was doing. So I worked hard, and it worked out okay. But so then we played for the airplanes coming in underneath this big white tent. And then when they got off the plane, the president of Boeing got off, and we played him off the plane. Then the Douglas guys landed from L.A., and we played him off the plane. Then They all enjoyed a couple of tunes, some tune that we played. Then they got up on this wooden stage. It was just a little platform, actually. And they gave their speeches about how we're merging our two airplane companies.
Right.
And then we played them off. And then we played for the audience that was there. But there was 7 o'clock in the morning. There was hardly anybody there.
Right.
And so then the two trumpet players got into some kind of a beef, and I stayed away from any of that politics and tried to put my clarinet together. And the two the guy from New York and the other guy from New York said, "You don't pass out a card on my job." And I never thought about that. I never even had any cards.
Right.
But now I pass out cards to everybody. I gave you one.
Yeah.
I gave Daniel one.
Yeah.
And I used to be Sam Sausage when I was on the road,
Yeah, yeah.
So the idea was having that experience has tipped me up to where I've all of a sudden, about a year ago, looked at myself and said, my God, all I did was try to get better. Practice. I was learning Ebert's Concerto for Concertina da Camera, recorded in 1936 by Marcel Moulet, classical alto saxophone. And they didn't have stuff to photograph in those days. It was like 17 pages, some tacked to Johnny's studio. So when he was gone, I was... So it was, and the second one was just harp and alto saxophone. So I was always trying to learn.
So if I understand what you're saying, Seattle shaped your career in that you were always trying to learn, you were always trying to get better, but you because you weren't with musicians that were as aggressive as the New York musicians, you didn't market yourself, and that had an effect on your career. Is that what you're...
Yeah, actually, sure. Every time I left town, I was a huge success. I went, wow, God, I'm doing great. But if I come back to Seattle, I didn't do, it was like, nothing going on here.
Right.
Freddie Hubbard said to me, boy, it's too mellow up there. I got to get out of there,
Right.
But he gave me the key to his house. I could go swimming in his pool.
Right.
Talk to his young boy's son and his wife. It was a different... There was really a different attitude. Same with Stan Getz. Stan Getz, after he finished his job, almost lost him. I had an old 1949 Buick with the passenger door would open up. And so he was at the Penthouse in 1960. And so we're going home, and he wouldn't say a word. He always gave it on the bandstand. He gave everything he had right there on the stage. And when we got in my car, it was total silence. He was just like wiped out.
Yeah.
And so I'm going along in Piners Square, and there was a big left turn. And this is about, 3. I got another story for that club. So what happened was the door swung open, and he's just sitting there. And I'm going around the corner with so I grabbed the steering wheel, and I reached over and grabbed him by the shoulder. And went wham, because he was on his way out the door, because he was, totally gone.
Yeah.
So I grabbed him and pulled him back in, and then got off and stopped the car and slammed the door. And I said, this door don't work. But he was, so then I dropped him off at the hotel, and his overcoats never fit. They were always too damn big. But he would be at Jazz Alley, the old one out in the Ave, and upstairs he would be putting his coat on, and he would yell at me, "Hey, Ronnie, where are we going to go tonight?" And I says, "Chinatown," because I live in Chinatown. So we go down and get some Chinese food. But what happened was then when he came back with his big hit record, The Girl from Ipanema, so I'm down there with Astro Gilberto, and I'm watching everybody like a hawk because I get them there and get them back. And And they never asked me to play with them, that's for sure.
And where is this?
This is called the Penthouse.
Okay.
Yeah. It was First and Cherry.
Okay.
Doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But so he's playing, and all of a sudden the bartender comes around. Stan was drinking Grand Marniers, and he would change shirts every set. Be wringing wet. And have a little Grand Marnier, put a new shirt on, off we go again. Well, all of a sudden, the bartender yelled that somebody had spanked Gilberto's baby at the Mayflower Hotel. And she was flipped off. She was right in the middle of, tall and tan and young and lovely, and jumped off the bandstand, grabbed me by the shoulder, and off we went into the car up to get her child. So we got her child, and then we come back to the Penthouse and we go upstairs. So now I'm babysitting Gilberto's child upstairs while she's singing this pop hit that they had, and it was a pretty good tune.
Yeah.
And so, but those are stories that, that's the nuances that I could give. Like when I opened up the World's Fair, I couldn't believe that I opened up the World's Fair. And then when everybody heard that band, I got on the NBC Today show. And when everybody saw me on the NBC Today show, William Morris called me up and they wanted that band.
Right.
And I realized that Elvis went out at 44. Billie Holiday went out at 44. Judy Garland went out at 44. They work you to death. And I was just opening up a teenage nightclub on 2nd and Union, which is now the Benaroya Hall.
Right. When you were 44?
No, I was about 37.
Okay.
And they had 9 go-go dancers. It was 1965, 66. God, the music in 1966 was just spectacular. And to this very day, they're still playing that stuff,
Yeah.
And 67 and 68, it started getting psychedelic, which is, in other words, it became less social dancing because the sailors were from New York and New Jersey, and they were going to Vietnam. So that's a whole wonderful story about the love from the go-go girls to the sailors. They're all 18 years old.
Right.
And they're heading for Vietnam, and none of them came back. They got killed.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a suit like this. This is a suit I got on in 1936. This is the real deal. But there was a tailor-made suit because his father was a professional tailor in New Jersey. And he left that suit there. And I left it there for a year. And I hang out in the closet, and he never came back. He got killed. My bartender went over there, and he would not take a gun and shoot it. So then they put him in picking up dead people, and they ambushed him and killed him. He was only there 2 weeks in Vietnam. But everybody loved Pat Murphy. And this is another story. His sister and mother and father, I'm playing Ringing Wet in a rock and roll band, playing piano.
At the Vault.
This is 1966.
At the Vault.
Yeah, at the Vault, yeah. Yeah, I owned the place.
Right.
And, of course, I'm not going to say what I had to do. It's not fair to everybody. But I got great stories because I was living this great club. I mean, it was just out of sight.
Right.
And so what happened was now to support the carpenters, because I had 40 things from the city, the health department, the building department, the police force, everything. I had to bring 2 sailors got knifed and killed in 1950.
In your club?
Yeah, and there was and they tried to get licenses open, but they couldn't get it open. So I had no liquor. I opened up as a coffee house and packed the place because the sailors had wine under their mini blouses, and I had an 88-year-old woman, Emma, who played every ballroom, that took ID. So this is a great story. So the Vault was jam-packed, and I'm Ringing Wet. Well, Pat Murphy was loved by everybody. He was really a strong Roosevelt High School kid. And him and his other friend, Bob Hill, worked the bar. And we only charged 25 cents for a cup of Coke, but it was a 6-ounce glass, a regular 6-ounce beer glass, but it's only filled up with about 4 ounces of Coke because it was all ice.
Right.
So anyhow, he was very loved, and we had great parties after work. It was just like that's when we played jazz from 2 in the morning until 6 in the morning, and they were going name players, jazz players on the road. Like Percy Heath came down and brought a go-go girl from another club, and then he bought me a strawberry waffle and gave me a huge cigar. My God, but they were. It was hard to talk to somebody that weren't a musician. Right. I just ran away because, I was like, what do I want? What do I know about pulling a tooth? I don't know. I don't need to know.
So the vault played rock in the earlier hours, but then at night it would play the music you liked, the jazz music.
Yeah, all the kids left.
Right.
And so then we got the door opened, and Dizzy Gillespie came in there after his gig and looked around and said, "Boy, you guys sure got it made here." And Percy Heath came in after he was with the Modern Jazz Quartet, and so I got 12 years there. And so whenever these guys like. Somebody sang Moon River with Andy Williams. He was a very famous piano player and owned part of A&M Records. But he came on just thrilled to play his attitude of music, instead of getting stuck making. But anyhow, it was really fattening my head.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Now, there was one question I wanted to ask you, which was, you mentioned earlier you were playing, Thelonious and you were playing Miles.
Yeah.
And then when you did play, when you opened the World's Fair, I mean, you were probably playing quite different music. How difficult was it for you to...
Well, what happened was I had worked so hard and I was so young, I could play in swing bands all my life, and I loved that. I was playing in the New Deal Rhythm Band, which is hugely popular, and we played, Portland at the Earth Tavern, and then we'd play all the colleges, and all these kids who are interested in music would come down and listen to those, because John Holt would write these original charts, and, I just still love the At the Mummy's Ball. It was just like, wow, that's really good stuff. But he died in my arms at the China Harbor restaurant. And so what happened was I ended up knowing, because all the people I worked with, learning, Darktown Shutter's Ball or 5'2" or all that stuff. So I had that stashed away in my brain. And then what happened was I'm playing at the Blue Banjo. I opened that up in 1959 with banjo, clarinet, and stride piano. And it was 25 cents to get in, and there was lines all the way around the right door and the left door. And it was like one banjo. And it was so popular, then they had 2 banjos. So, so we got 2 banjos whacking away. And I'm up on a way high balcony looking down at the people. And it became more like a sing-along. I've been working on the railroad, and everybody was just drunk. And they were all from this college. This guy named Jack Fecker was a real businessman. I mean, he knew how to do things. So then they added a 3rd banjo, and my audio went out. I couldn't take it anymore. After 3 years, and now 3 banjos, I quit. So I quit, and I went down to Genesee and Rainier. And I played in a club with a Hammond organ player who didn't know nothing about music. He just kept the job by an admission. He'd go back and get ice for the bartender, and the bartender owned the joint. So I'm playing along there, and it was like a pickup place, singles. So I'm playing drums behind this guy. We'd be playing, Stardust. We automatically go into the Bridge of Penthouse Serenade. And I went, God, this guy doesn't know nothing. He wasn't a musician. He was just...
A guy.
who owned a machine called a Hammond organ. So anyhow, this guy every night before he would left, and I'm underneath a false palm tree and water, and it was just a jive-ass thing. So I'm playing along, but the money was good. Double money what I was getting at the Blue Band Show.
Right.
Good money. So I had to feed my family, which I did. So the next thing I know, this guy every night over to my right stood against the wall and looked at me. And I'm like, what is this guy? Who is that guy? So day after day, he would come and dance with the women. It was all dancing music.
Right.
And then he would come over there. So I didn't meet him because I was on the band, but with two-piece band. But the money was good, and he would keep looking at me sincerely. So one day, I get a call. And Lorraine, my very beautiful wife, 32 years of marriage, never cheated or nothing. I was so happy to be monogamous. That made me proud of myself, especially when you got 9 go-go girls that are trying to hustle you. And then the girls wanted to get in free, so it was like, oh, God. So anyhow, what happened was, I got great stories.
Yeah, I bet.
but that's the nuance of my life, which is where the really real deal. So the thing was that, so it was this guy who was a real estate agent, and his name was Hugh Cohan, and Lorraine came in at 9 o'clock because I don't get up until 2 in the afternoon. And I said, no, I'm not going to answer the phone. Well, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. He says, this sounds really serious, Ronnie. And I said, okay, Lorraine. So I got up and I answered the phone. And he says, well, you'd be a perfect man to open up a nightclub. Ah, God, I've been playing in nightclubs ever since I've been 14. I don't need a nightclub. I don't want a nightclub. That's total beyond me. He said, well, you sure are rude. And I went, oh, there goes my insecurity valve. I said, okay, I'll talk to you, but I have a student at 2:30, which is the time the Chinaman goes to the dentist. Of course, that's very good. The idea is, next thing I know, he's standing in front of 2nd and Union, where the Benaroya Hall is now, and it was called the Spinning Wheel. Great big sign with the neon coming off and on. And it was very popular all through the 20s. It was the Loge, then it was the Silver Dollar in the 30s, and then in the 40s it was the Spinning Wheel. Very sort of the club. So then it got, when the guys got knifed, and the license came right off the wall.
Right. And
me not knowing a damn thing about business, I went down to this club. I met the guy, and it was, I said, yeah, I know you. I see you every night. And he says, yeah, but you'd be perfect to open up this club. And I says, well, God, I'm really busy just trying to play horn. And he says, well, so we walked down 18 stairs, just like the Beatles deal. 18 stairs, and he says, now you stay here. It's all black and all dark. I'll walk across the dance floor. So we walk across the dance floor, and boom, all these lights come on. And it was gorgeous. There was a gold piano on stage with white leather and black stars or something on, to do that. And a stage, and then a bar that sat 20 people on stools with mirrors all over the place. It was like a dance floor. And oh, my God, I just went, wow, this is better than any club I've been playing in, And so then he said, he was a salesman, and I'm just still looking at you don't see a gold piano on a bandstand. And so we walked down to 2nd and Cherry. His dad was A.H. Cohan, big-time professional real estate guy. His brother was Don Cohan, and his name was Hugh Cohan. And so they got me down there, and lo and behold, not being a businessman, I signed a 10-year lease on this building. And so, of course, what happened was, that happened, but in the between time, Jack Fecker, who owned the Blue Banjo, called me up and says, I want you back here, Ronnie. And I says, well, I'm doing pretty good, Hugh. It's only 2 pieces, but nothing to do with music. It's just a bunch of baloney. And he says, I'll double your salary. And I says, oh, okay, but the idea is that I'm going to make an act out of you. What do you mean? Well, you got to wear bright yellow spats. Mm-hmm. You got to wear straw hats, and you got to wear vests, and you're going to have a six-piece band with a beautiful blonde girl singer, and you push another button, and another stage comes out, and you go out and play low register Am I Blue behind her words. Mm-hmm. And I says, well, for that kind of money, you can call me anything you want. Well, your new name, yeah, your new name is now Skinny Malone, and it's Hot Bananas, music with appeal. And I says, okay, fine. So we'd play Yes, We Got No Bananas, great drummer out of Canada, big role. And I'm looking at these guys in this weird nightclub because he bought another nightclub called Louis Old Chicago, and he had a casket. And the guy draped as a guy with white gloves on and bowler hat. And so they would come in there, and I'm playing, Yes, we got no banana. We got no bananas today. Good evening, bye-bye, goodbye bonds. So I left, and out of the blue came the NBC staff that would hire bands. It was three men and a woman, and they were out for the World's Fair, to open the World's Fair.
Right.
And I blew them off. I said, they came right up to me, oh, God, we want you for the World's Fair, to open the World's Fair. And I looked at them like, oh, you must be crazy. You know, that just doesn't happen to a guy.
Right.
So I told him, well, the bartender's got a better band than this. And I got a ride home with the drummer because they only lived 2 blocks from me out in the North End. So the next thing I know, 9 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from King Television. And they say, is your name Skinny Malone? And I says, what? I don't know. Oh, yeah, I guess so. So they says, well, I want you to get down here and sign a union contract for the Today Show. So nobody in Seattle had ever played national television. I was the first. And so what happened was Seattle local didn't know the union scale for coast-to-coast television. So I had to call Local 802, and they had to look it up themselves. And so great money. I went, wowie kazowie, I'm styling here. So the next thing I know, I'm standing on the back of Wild Mouse with my 6-piece band. So I had 2 shimmy dancers dressed in black satin with long fringe, and one on this side and one on this side. And we're playing music from the 20s. But I had no idea that was a future World's Fair. You know, they said Space Needle and all that stuff. I didn't know. I was too busy. But I'm playing Ain't She Sweet? Yes, sir, that's my baby. Somebody's told my gal I'm playing old music from the 20s.
Right.
And I got a banjo player, was a virtuoso banjo star, and a trumpet player, like 6'4", skinny, out of San Francisco with a little cornet. He looked like Skinny Malone.
Right.
You know, but I didn't look like Skinny Malone. I just played the alto saxophone. So the joint was jammed, 90,000 people, and people come up and pull my pants. I'm on stage. We didn't come to see this damn fair. We came to see you, Skinny. I'm from Texas. And I went, God, I'm popular in hell. So I get this call from William Morris saying, we saw you on the Today Show, and we want to hire you, book you on our program. And I said, well, you're in Rome and Paris and New York and Italy and all that. Yeah, no, we're the big deal. We're in Beverly Hills. We want you to come down. And I turned him down. The piano player was an older guy. Everybody was older than me, except the 2 girls. And but the audience went crazy. The people that, so 25 years later, they hired Skinny Malone again to honor the guys that built the World's Fair. And I'm thinking, this is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So my dear friend Dick Thorlickson, a great trombone player, and helped me a lot loosening up my soul, because he always had wonderful lines. You have to thank people in this world. Thank you. He was always had this kind of stuff going on, which was just marvelous for me because I was sort of organized, trying to get better. But Dick was my friend, so we're playing a tune called Moanin'. And it was his tune. So at the second, 25 years later, we're being filmed on camera. I was in the back of the stage at the Seattle Center, and every media was there. Every television table, every newspaper was there. Everybody that was involved with promoting, showing respect to the guys that built the World Fair. And these were all old guys, you know. And so I'm just like, yeah, boy, I was trying to keep up. I see myself on television on different stations. Oh, wow, what is this? And nobody knew my name. Nobody knew my name was Ronnie Pierce.
Right.
I was Skinny Malone and Hot Banana. So what happened was Dick sang, so I had trombone, trumpet, me on front line, and then Gypsy Sue on violin, and then Buddy on bass. And so we're playing this gig, only Buddy didn't show up. So Gypsy Sue called his house and said, you know, we're performing for you were hired to play this gig. And he says, oh, so we're all in tuxedos, bow ties, great musicians, Al Ture on guitar, famous, Johnny Whitworth on piano, famous, and me and the trombone player who sang, every morning I've been moaning. And the drummer didn't know how to play the answer. Yes, Lord. It was a woman drummer named somebody. And so I had to walk back there and say, now, when he does that, every morning I've been moaning, yes, Lord. Finally, she smiled at me. In comes Buddy with a bright yellow sweater. And I mean, looking, oh, God, this is highly published sized gig.
Yeah.
And he was sick. And I went over and stood by him, and I didn't say a word. I thought, man, I got nothing to say to Buddy Catlin.
Right.
So he did, but he played good. He was taught from Tiny Martin, and tone was better than anybody in town. He knew how to make it sound good. Right. And all the other guys were sort of winging it on their own. But Tiny Martin was president of the union, had his own television show 5 days a week, played 6 nights a week in a band that had been there 25 years, which I got that book called The Town and Country Club. He was hugely popular, but he beat 360 audition bass players for the Boston Symphony by playing Flight of the Bumblebee.
Right.
He played the Flight of the Bumblebee and got the job, a lifetime job, playing bass in the Seattle Symphony. I mean, in the Boston Symphony, which is a famous orchestra.
Sure.
And so Buddy took lessons from him because he got emphysema or something, and he had to quit blowing a horn. You know? And so, but his tone, you could have 3 bass players come up. When Buddy stepped on the stage, the tone was magnificent. It was right there because he knew what to do.
Right.
From Tiny Martin, because he was a big winner.
Right.
But as far as Skinny Malone and Hot Bananas, it was very famous.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going down playing. I start at 3 in the afternoon until 8 on the Food Circus stage with this stride piano player. I didn't have a bass because the piano could beat the bass.
Right.
That's what we were playing. And then the 2 shimmy dancers, then a trumpet player, looked like Skinny, played all the old stuff, me and a banjo player who's a famous virtuoso of the banjo player. Right. And so we're playing along, and the people are just digging it. They got a balcony full of, and I remember on the day they had all the announcers from NBC. They were all famous, big-time announcers in the 60s. This is what, 60 what? What year was it? Oh, 62, yeah. May of 62. So I dropped everything except I already had started paying carpenters to get my building up to code, which was tons of money. So I put Lorraine on drums because she studied from the same drummer I studied from. So so we got Lorraine on drums, sitting up high, and they were making about $750 a week. So I would then catch a cab. She'd take the car, go home, babysit the children. I would go and start Louis' Old Chicago with another band and play until 1:30 in the morning.
Right.
And so it turns out that that's where they saw me, was in the second job. They came up and they said, "You're like Mickey Rooney, you know just what to say in 15 seconds."
Right.
But today, you see, I need about 5 hours to get through 75 years of playing music.
Yeah.
But that's how we're going to have a second.
Yeah.
We're going to have
I think
so.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just starting to get hot. I'm just starting to get, you're going to be so scared about. So anyhow, Skinny Malone and the Hot Bananas was just a huge success. And why would anybody hire me 25 years later? That had to be quite famous, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so then Dick yelled. He's going, "Every morning I've been moaning and all the biddle-dee, that's a bridge, daddle-do-dat." And then he screamed. Huge, big screen on the bandstand. And my son Harry loves that. We got the tape of that one. Uh-huh. He just loved Dick screaming on the band. Yeah. Oh, Lord, I got the Lord. Who's that guy?
I think we should probably stop here and get you some water.
Yeah.
And then we'll work on part 2 another time.
Yeah.